Watching Kyle's unboxing videos again?
Yeah, he always finds the coolest... No way! A robot dog? Gotta ask where he got it.
Or use your Samsung Galaxy S24 Ultra. Just draw a circle around the dog on your screen, and it shows you where to buy it right in the app.
Whoa, I just learned a new trick. And that for once, I beat Kyle to the next big thing.
Circle it, find it with the new Galaxy S24 Ultra and circle the search with Google. Get yours now at Samsung.com. Internet connection required. Results may vary based on visuals.
Hey there, Duke fans, and welcome to episode 404 of the Duke Basketball Report podcast. I am Jason Evans. You know, 404 is the Atlanta area code, and so the Atlanta boy is hosting this time. And you know, I'm going to freely admit we've had some podcasts lately where one or another of us has been missing. We are all in the house for this one because the NCAA tournament has begun. The Duke Blue Devils have played their first game, and we are here to talk about it, as well as looking ahead to the next game. By the way, the most important thing for Duke over the next several weeks is play the game and then look ahead to the next game, and the next one. We want to keep on playing, and that is what we will be doing as the Blue Devils beat Cal State Fullerton. Like I said, I'm Jason. I am joined by Sam and Donald. Sam's in Boston. My friend, how you doing this morning?
I am great. It's kind of a nasty day here in the Boston area, but very happy that Duke was able to make a laugher out of the Cal State Fullerton game last night, not out of Cal State Fullerton, the team. They had a wonderful season, of course, but very glad that Duke was not one of the many high-seeded teams in the first round to make things difficult for themselves. And I know that we'll maybe spend just a minute or two talking about Kentucky at some point. So glad that was the case, that we were able to switch away from this game and move to the other interesting games last night, as opposed to waiting it out for the first or for the whole 40 minutes.
Oh yeah. Donald is in Washington. I'm sure you enjoyed that contest last night.
I sure did. For some reason, I felt, I woke up on Friday and had the urge to have some barbecue. Not sure why I had that rationale, but I decided to hold off to make sure that, we were able to get through the first round. And sure enough, we did. So very, very happy to say that we are in the second round, and we still have a long way to go, but Sunday's game is going to be a really, really big one. So let's get to talking about the game on Friday.
Absolutely. That folks, just so you know, we'll be recapping the Cal State Fullerton game. We'll take a little break. Then we'll look ahead to what Duke has next against Michigan State, a very, very familiar opponent. And we'll talk about the rest of the bracket. But we start with Duke's 78-61 victory over Cal State Fullerton. And we start, as we always do, with the headlines. We had a couple headlines from the audience, from you listeners out there. And remember, when the game ends, send us an email at dbrpodcast@gmail.com, dbrpodcast@gmail.com. And when you send us that email, include your headline for the game, and maybe it'll be good enough for us to read it. The ones that I'm going to read today, always, the K-Man, David Kerman, comes through. He said, Devils throw a block party and dial up the D in takedown of the Titans. That is the K-Man's headline, and I think that's a pretty accurate headline. And then I love this one. Paula Anderson wrote to us. You know what her headline was, guys? She said, whew. That was her entire headline. A little sigh of relief. Yeah. Sigh of relief there from Paula about Duke getting the first round victory and avoiding the dreaded 2-15 upset that some teams have fallen prey to. My headline was somewhat similar to K-Man. I have D returns for Duke in workmanlike win. Donald, what is your headline on this contest?
So since Cal State Fullerton are the Titans, I went with solid Devils slay Titans to advance an NCAA tournament. Pretty simple.
Yep. Well done. And Sam?
I had just a laugher at last.
You know, was it a laugher? It wasn't really. I mean, like Duke had a lead throughout, but I don't feel like this wasn't a laugher.
I'll tell you.
We had to keep working the whole way, you know?
Sir, so maybe another way to characterize it is that Duke's win probability Duke's lowest win probability of the game was at the tip-off. And according to Ken Pomeroy, Duke had a 93.6% chance to win the game at the tip. And it didn't only improve from there. Of course, Fullerton went on a couple of mini runs, but it never actually got worse than that for the entire 40 minutes. And given the way we were talking about the team last week after the ACC tournament with the loss to Virginia Tech and after the UNC home finale, I'd say that Duke needed one like this.
I will agree with that. There's no question about it. A low stress game where the Blue Devils were in control throughout. And look, we raced out to a 13-2 lead. There was never, I think that there were like two possessions. The first two possessions of the game were the only times the whole game where Duke led by less than two possessions. So yeah, I'll take that. That does make it easier. So let's talk about the good first. And Sam, I'll come to you. Give me your good from this game. You're allowed to start with anybody, but you're also allowed to start with Jeremy Roach.
Yeah, I had notes on both Jeremy Roach and Mark Williams. So if you want, I'll do Jeremy Roach first. Jeremy Roach inserted into the starting lineup for the first time in over a month. Trevor Keels had supplanted him for a while, and now it appears that Roach is back in that spot. It was I'd say in the grand scheme, a fairly bold move for Coach K to change the starting lineup at the beginning of the NCAA tournament. Not that something didn't need to be done, right? We talked about how Duke had been in a little bit of a swoon recently, and so something needed to change. But wow, did Jeremy Roach rise to the occasion yesterday against Fullerton? He was much more engaged on offense, made a couple of big shots in this game, and also was an enormous pest on defense. Only is credited with one steal, but disrupted a lot of what Fullerton was trying to do, and made a couple of neat passes. I think one of the highlights of the game yesterday was Jeremy Roach received an entry pass where he was like right next to the basket, but was clearly guarded and dumped it off to, now I can't remember, it was Paulo or it was Mark Williams, but turned it into a very key assist. A really impressive looking assist where he was sort of playing out of position. My friend I was watching the game with and I both reacted to that play like, I'm not sure that we have seen that setup from Duke yet this year. So that was super cool for Jeremy Roach. Clearly feeling energized about being back in the starting lineup. I'm sure we'll talk about Trevor Keels' performance, unfortunately, maybe in the bad part, but as far as Roach is concerned, one of his best performances in weeks, and really displaying the progress that he has made recently.
Yeah, and the reason I prompted you to talk about Jeremy Roach is that I thought that was the story of the game. Not so much the reason that Duke won, but Jeremy Roach being reinserted into the starting lineup, and specifically what he did on defense, to me was the story of the game, because the Duke's struggles lately. We have talked about it endlessly. Duke's struggles have been on the defensive end of the floor. And in this game, we hold Fullerton to just 29% shooting from three, just 37% shooting overall. And, Duke wasn't forcing turnovers. We started forcing turnovers again. But more importantly than that, Jeremy Roach putting pressure on them in the backcourt, just forcing Fullerton to set things up a little bit further back than they want to ordinarily. It kept Fullerton out of a comfortable offensive set. And that is when Duke is most successful. There's sort of two different ways you can be successful on defense as an individual. You can be really quick, with good hands and feet, or you can be really strong and be physical. And Jeremy Roach and Trevor Keels are two diametrically different defensive players. Trevor Keels is very strong. And he keeps you from getting to where you want by using his body to get in your way. He is not super quick. Jeremy Roach, on the other hand, not nearly as strong as Trevor Keels, way quicker with his feet, especially. It fights over screens better than Trevor Keels does, and just is able to pick an opposing point guard up, all the way at the other end of the floor and keep the pressure on them the whole time. That's what Jeremy Roach did in this game. That's something Duke has been sorely missing in recent weeks. and it was just really good to get it back. Donald, your turn. If you want to do more on Jeremy Roach, fine. If you want to move to Mark Williams, I'm also perfectly fine with that.
I'm definitely moving to Mark Williams because we talked about the perimeter defense, and when Cal State Fullerton went into the paint, they had no favors there either because Mark Williams led the block party, as K-Man said. 10 blocks for this team, 5 of them by Mark Williams. But Mark Williams was great on offense as well. 15 points, 7 rebounds, 5 assists along with those 5 blocks. So he literally did everything on the court when he was in the game. He played 31 minutes as well, which is something, Jason, you talked about the efficiency and effectiveness of Mark Williams being when he's in the game. 31 minutes is I think, to date, his biggest output on the season as far as minutes. So I think, again, he was very efficient when he was in the game, both on offense and defense. On defense, he had a couple of ones where he blocked a shot and came down with the rebound in the same hand. And they're very subtle man moves, right? They weren't things that you kind of looked at and go, oh, that was interesting. It wasn't demonstrative at all. It was just one of those things where he was like, hi, I'm the biggest guy on the court. And when the ball goes up, it's going to come back down to my hands. And I'm just going to take 2 stats as I run down to the end of the court. And run he did. This is where I think he excelled, right? He would get the rebound or he'd get the block shot, and then he would sprint to the other end of the court. And many times he was in a position where we could reward him for the defense that he had on the other end of the floor. That's what I want to see from him, that kind of mojo, that motor. We're going to need that in the next round, and especially on defense. But the fact that he's able to block a shot, grab a rebound, outlet the pass, and then beat everybody down the floor to get in position is something that I really appreciated from him.
Regarding Mark Williams, I talked about the keys that I had for Duke in the postseason was his effectiveness. Mark Williams had 15 points, 7 rebounds, 5 blocks, and 5 assists. Just the third time in Duke's history that someone had a 15, 5, 5, and 5 game. Again, 15 points, 7 rebounds, 5 blocks, 5 assists. The other 2 players who had a 15, 5, 5, and 5 game, Mike Jaminski and Danny Ferry. That is some really good company to be in. I mean,
that's good.
It's been a minute.
Really good.
Yeah, right.
Since Duke had a game like that.
It has been right. It has been since my class. Danny Ferry.
I was going to say that's in the pre Sam Klein era. In the pre Sam Klein's existence
in life,
era.
Yeah.
I just feel like the whole game has slowed down for Mark Williams so much lately. The 5 assists to me, there was such great recognition on Mark Williams's part of, okay, I've got the ball, but here are my teammates, and I know where they are. I know where they're supposed to be. I know where I am. I mean, just to see him blossoming like this, and the 5 blocks, by the way, it's laughable that it's only 5. There needs to be a statistic for the number of times Cal State Fullerton went in the lane and went, oh, wait, Mark Williams is back here. I am getting out of here as quickly as I can. I do not want to be here.
Jason, I want to say of the first 8 possessions that Cal State Fullerton had, 5 of them ended in blocks, and they still were like, oh, we're still going to go to the lane. And they'd go and they see the 7-foot-1-inch tall tree, and they're going to go, nah, I'm just going to pass it off. Good. You take it. No, you take it. No, you take it. They were flustered, and that's how we got out to that big lead at the beginning of the game.
And of course, it's worth noting Cal State Fullerton, the way they want to play is to get the ball inside to their big man Anasicki, but they were afraid of the long arm of the law from Mark Williams. Sam, you got anything else on Mark?
Yeah, just that as you said, continue to be impressed with the progress late in the season. I think we all know that the talent is there for Mark Williams, but there was a drive yesterday that shows that he's got that extra gear. And I think when we're concerned about sort of what he looks like at the next level, one of the things is he just going to be tough and big enough to hack it against other NBA bigs? Yesterday was a great indicator of that, and hopefully Duke has a few more games where he can continue to prove it.
All right, we continue to round through the good here, and Donald, ball movement. I know you love that. I love it as well. It is your favorite stat is assist percentage. So take us through that.
I mean, it's one of my favorite stats because it's something that indicates how well we are moving the ball around on offense. And we had 21 assists last night on 30 made baskets. That, my friends, I'm not going to do the math, but you could do it at home. That's a great percentage. That's what you want to see. That's the type of ball movement that you want to see. 21 assists and 30 made baskets means, again, Mark Williams had 5 assists. The biggest guy on the court had 5 assists. That is indicative of how well we were moving the ball around for most of the game. I think there was only a couple of times where we really had, stagnated, but most of those were just, there wasn't a lot of people just taking guys ISO off the dribble. It was a lot of guys getting into position and finding their teammates for quick baskets.
And by the way, Donald, we raced out to that 13-2 lead based on, we had 5 assists on our first 5 baskets. You just love, and it was early on, it was mostly Wendell Moore. By the way, Wendell had another 10-5-5 game. He had 13, 6 and 6, only 2 turnovers, hit 3 of 4 from 3, 5 of 8 overall. Wendell, we've come to expect this from him, but what a great all around game. But sorry, you continue where you were going. I just want to jump in. I love that we had 5 assists in our first 5 made baskets.
Yeah, I did too. And honestly, I think the assists came from everywhere. You mentioned Wendell Moore had 6 assists. Paulo Banchero, we'll talk about him in a little bit. He had 4 assists. Mark Williams, 5 assists. Jeremy Roach, 5 assists. Trevor Keels even had an assist. Like 21 assists is a lot of passing the ball around. And also, it means that we're making baskets off of that ball movement too, which means guys were in great positions to take open shots. And if you noticed last night, there were very few shots that we were taking that were contested, except if they were in the lane. Most of the shots on the perimeter or around the free throw line were very much wide open shots because we were able to move guys into position. Everyone was moving around the floor and the ball was moving too. And they got someone into position where they could take an easy shot. And you're going to shoot 50% if you're going to, be open half the time. So I like what I saw from that. Again, in the preview, we talked about how this game, the ball movement had to be indicative of what we saw in the 3 games we played against Syracuse. And we saw that Cal State Fullerton was a team that loved to give up shots off of the pass. And we did that last night. We saw that and executed that very, very well.
And Donald, I know you wanted to talk a little bit about Paulo Banchero. You teased that a second ago. What did you think of his game?
He was very aggressive on offense. And we've talked about a lot of the times where he has not been aggressive in getting to the lane or getting to the rack and making baskets. He was very effective at doing that last night. He was 7 for 14 from the floor. So 50%, that's pretty good. 17 points, 10 rebounds, 4 assists, and 2 blocks. Again, all over the place on offense, on defense. He really wanted to assume himself as the main on the floor. And early on in the game, Jason, part of that 13-2 run that we opened up with, a lot of that was Wendell finding Paulo Banchero and Paulo Banchero taking it to the rack or shooting a couple threes. Again, there was only a couple of shots where I said, hey, that probably wasn't the best shot to take at the time. But a lot of his shots he was 7 for 14. One of them was where he threw it and he did a layup and it went off the rim and he just grabbed it and dunked it in the same catch essentially. So
that was amazing.
That was great. So I'll take that out of the equation, but there are definite times where he looked to assert himself on offense, but also what was in the flow of the offense. And that's the Paulo Banchero we want. We want a guy who's going to go for 17. He's going to, contribute on defense as well. And I think he was active. There was definite times where he would shoot the ball, make a basket. Cal State Fullerton would have to take a timeout. And he was the guy encouraging guys to let's go. Let's ratchet it up. Let's pick the tempo. Let's pick the level up and play Duke basketball. And I think he did that last night.
So I got a stat question for both of you guys. There are some funky stat things in this game. Duke and Cal State Fullerton, neither team missed a free throw. They went 17 of 17 on free throws, which is kind of a weird, I tried to look to see how often that kind of thing happens in an NCAA tournament game. I couldn't find it, but I thought it was sort of interesting. Another weird stat thing, Duke shot 15 of 29 from the field in the first half and 15 of 29 from the field in the second half.
I noticed that too. Yeah.
That's just sort of that's kind of cool,
Very consistent.
Yes. So the weird stat thing I have is, does AJ Griffin deserve an assist for the time he tried to toss a lob? It got blocked back to him and he ended up making the layup.
The dunk.
Is that like an assist to himself?
An assist to himself. Is that possible?
It was a very athletic play, regardless of how it was credited.
That's called playing in 4D. Right. And not 3-dimensional. He was 4-dimensional. He was like, I know what this guy's going to do. And the funny thing
no, he didn't.
He did it. But here's the funny thing, though, is that footwork is everything. He found a way, as soon as he threw the ball, he kind of took just a slight step into the middle. Not a big one, just a slight step, just to get in front of that guy that was right next to him. And because of that, when the ball was tipped back over, he's the first person there. So he goes, okay, well, not only can I grab this, I know the guy that is guarding me is behind me, and all he can do was watch me dunk this. And that's exactly what happened. I think that's just, I mean, it may be where he didn't know the ball was going to come back to him, but just that slight footwork, that slight step to get in front of his man is what made the difference in that possession. He got the basket out of it because he was in front of his man. And that's the smallest detail that ends up being successful for this team.
So I'm going to move us now from the good to the bad, because it wasn't a perfect game. There are things that Duke still needs to work on. I'm going to start really quickly. It's not a big thing, but I just did want to mention the shot selection, and I'm doing it now because Donald was talking about Paulo Banchero, and I did feel like Paulo was taking those bad shots. He took 5 shots outside of the lane, but inside the 3-point line. He only hit one of them, and that was like a 10-footer. It was like the shortest one he took. All the ones he took, like longer than 10 feet, didn't go in. It is painful to watch at times for me. I'm such a huge efficiency fan, and Paulo takes these shots that frankly are inefficient and didn't hit any of them this game. But I've come to accept that that's just sort of part of his game, and I think part of his ability to drive and get inside is that teams have to respect him when he's outside, and so. But it was still, I don't love to see it. So that's,
and it wasn't just him, right? It wasn't just him. There was again, I think the times where on offense we were stagnant is where we were reduced to taking those shots, right? Like the Cal Singler twos that I call them, because Cal Singler made a lifetime out of making those, and everyone thought they could be Cal Singler, and now they can't. But I say there was a few times where we remained stagnant because of that. But again, I think what was great about Paulo is that, and we're Duke fans, we're going to nitpick about this, right? Because we want our teams to be great and successful and everything. And even though it was a solid victory, there's things that we can always work on. I think for Paulo, he recognized, Jason, after he had a few of those, that he wasn't making them. And then he decided to become more aggressive on the inside. He went in, he got dunks, he got layups, he got and ones. He took a couple of threes from the corner, and we were off and rolling again. And I think at that point he realized, hey, I just got to be more aggressive. These guys can't stop me. And that's the confidence he needs to keep going.
Yeah. And by the way, I admit, and I know there will be a game where he will go off from those, on those outside shots. We've seen it before. I'm here for that game. Yeah. I look forward to it.
Because if he does that, that means we're destroying somebody.
Exactly.
And look, it's never going to be perfect in terms of the terms of the shot selection, right? I don't want to be too picky on this, especially because it's not like Duke. Maybe in the second half there was like a couple minutes there where Fullerton was like starting to push back, but it's not like it's not like Duke was so threatened that they were like taking bad shots in desperation. This was one of those where, look, there's a little bit more leeway for guys like Banchero to take those weirder shots. So yes, it's not ideal in a game where if Duke was only winning by 4 or 5 points the whole way, but given the makeup of this game, I'm sort of less inclined to harp on it.
Yeah, and it's worth noting, Donald said probably the most important thing about this shot selection, which is that it felt like Paulo kind of recognized that it wasn't working for him, those outside shots, and that he said, okay, I'm gonna do something else. And to me, that's the important thing. If it's not happening, don't keep going to that well. Find some other way that you can help the team. And speaking of helping the team, Sam, I'm going to come to you on this. I want to talk about Trevor Keels just for a moment, because his in a game where everyone on the team had a plus minus in the teens or 20s, Trevor Keels plus minus was just +3 over 20 minutes of playing time. I don't know whether he didn't take his demotion from starter to coming off the bench well, or if he wasn't playing well and that's why he was coming off the bench. Probably a little combination of both. But I thought Trevor Keels was completely out of sorts on offense. 4 turnovers for Trevor. Duke only had 13 turnovers on the game. Trevor had 4 of those 13 in just 20 minutes of playing time, far and away the most turnovers of anybody on the team. Sam, what'd you see?
Yeah, it was
from
weird
Trevor
because I
Keels?
thought he was pressing a little bit, and maybe that is a result of the demotion to being on the bench. I don't know on this team how much it matters if it's Keels coming off the bench or Roach coming off the bench or AJ Griffin, who was coming off the bench earlier this season. I don't know how much it matters which of those guys is the sixth man as opposed to the fifth man, because they're all going to get minutes, especially if they're playing well. Duke has a really short bench. I was actually a little bit surprised to see Joey Baker in the first half yesterday, given that, we're in the part of the season where the rotation is going to be as slim as Coach K likes it to be, which honestly I think is six, right? On this team, Theo John's going to get a few minutes, but if Mark Williams is cooking like he was last night, Theo's not going to get that many minutes. Joey Baker doesn't need to get that many minutes if Duke is playing well on offense or well enough on offense to beat a team like Cal State Fullerton. So it was disappointing that we saw such an uneven performance from Trevor Keels. I think we could probably chalk it up to the demotion and sort of being in a different role than he's been in recently. I will say that if you think about, Duke's basically got the six starters, right? It's Bankero and Williams, Wendell Moore, Jeremy Roach, AJ Griffin, and Trevor Keels. Those guys are basically the six starters, even though you can only have five of them on the floor at a given time. Of that group, Trevor Keels might be the most effective at coming off the bench because he's really strong, he's fast, and he kind of changes the game a little bit when he comes in, when he's playing well. So it might be possible that this is the ideal rotation for Duke, even if it's not ideal for Trevor Keels. And look, if he's looking ahead at the NBA and draft selection and stuff like that, him coming off the bench right now is not going to have a meaningful impact on his draft stock. I think it's about focusing on what does it take for this team to win the championship. And hopefully today, we're recording Saturday morning. Hopefully today he's getting a little bit of a mouthful about that, and he's watching the tape and realizing, look, there are things you can improve. We know that you're good enough, and he'll come out firing against Michigan State, whether that's in the starting lineup or 5-6 minutes into the game.
So for Trevor Keels, I agree with you, Sam. I think he was pressing, and part of that is a stat that my best friend put me on last night. He said that dating back to the Syracuse game in the ACC tournament, Trevor Keels has missed his last 11 three-pointers. And I think a lot of that success that he had early in the season was because he was effective from three-point land. He was, not necessarily making them all, but he was making, 4 for 6, 3 for 6, and doing that consistently. And when that's gone, he tries to press by going into the lane. And because of that is where a lot of these turnovers came through, where he was dribbling and lost the ball or tried to pass it to somebody in an effort to try and make up for the fact that he's not making threes. So I think that is where the situation lies. If he can get his confidence back from the perimeter, even making 1-3 will help do wonders for his confidence. He just needs to get over that slump that he has from beyond the arc.
And look, we have seen Trevor Keels be the best player on the floor for Duke in multiple games this year. There's absolutely no question about that. He's carried this team at times. And I think that what Coach K, Sam talked about the 6 different starters. I think that Coach K is going to look and see which of those guys, and really it's among Keels, Roach, and AJ Griffin, which of those guys is having a tough game or which of those guys is playing really great. And that's the one he's going to go with. Just because Trevor Keels played 20 minutes this game doesn't mean he's not going to play, 32 in the next game if Trevor's playing really well. Coach K is really good at like, okay, this game you're on, you're going to stick around. You're going to play a lot for me. And, if you're struggling a little bit, I've got someone else who can take those minutes. So I don't think it's a huge deal. I do want to, as long as we mentioned this sort of rotation among Keels, Roach, and AJ Griffin, sort of a quiet game from AJ. He hasn't really been hitting his threes lately. Like, I don't know if I went back and looked over his past 6 games. AJ Griffin is just 9 of 28. That's 32% over his past 6 games. It's not terrible. It's not like awful, but it's not good.
But he was shooting 50% during the regular season.
Exactly. So 32%, way less than 50%. And by the way, that 32%, that 9 of 28 includes the game against Miami in the ACC tournament where he was 4 of 6. you take out that one game against Miami over the, 5 of the past 6 games, AJ Griffin has been just plain bad from 3-point range. I'm here for AJ Griffin having another big 3-point shooting game.
And again, that's confidence too. Just like Trevor Keels, like he's not seeing the ball go in the hole and it's frustrating him. And again, short of that play that we talked about for AJ Griffin, he's not the focal point of the offense when he's not making threes, right? Like he's not going to be a guy where we give the ball to him with 10 seconds left. We go create your own shot. He's a guy that we want to have on the perimeter, maybe slash to the basket at times, but he's not going to be the focal point. So when he's not making his threes, again, he starts pressing. And I think those two guys, if we can get them just the confidence of making a couple of 3-pointers, that'll go a long way for this team.
So I had one more bad thing that I think we absolutely positively must discuss. And that's the arena. And this is not an insignificant problem. And there are 2 aspects to it. I'll deal with the one that really isn't super important first, and then we'll get to the one that is important. The one that isn't super important is the fact that they completely bollocksed the ticket, the ticket, people coming in the arena. I have a friend who was at the game. They got there an hour before the game was going to start. People weren't even being let in yet an hour on. And he said that it was absolute chaos as they started to let people in. Part of the problem was they had a changeover from the previous game. The previous game sort of ended a little bit later than they expected. They did a little cleanup and stuff like that where they get everybody out and they clean up a little bit. Well, that whole process took longer than planned. And then once they reopened the doors and started getting people back in, there were problems like with the barcodes on the tickets. Like he said, for the morning session, his barcode scanned. For the afternoon session, it didn't. He had to go to like someplace else. He said he was not alone in that. There were thousands of people who were having barcode problems from Ticketmaster or someone else like that. And as a result, and Coach K talked about this, as a result, the arena was like only a third full at the start of the game. And like the atmosphere just wasn't there. Coach K said,
noticed this, Jason. I noticed this early in the game, and I didn't have all this backstory, but it was so weird that that there was like whether they were Duke fans or Davidson fans or like I would expect everyone to be in their seats well before this game.
Especially given the fact that I'm an Iron Duke, so I was getting those emails about the NCAA tournament tickets, and they're basically saying, hey, if you're not in the top level of Iron Dukes, you're not getting tickets. Yeah. So like literally it was like, okay, our section was beyond sold out. And of course, it being in Greenville, we had plenty of people who bought secondary tickets, whatever. So I was like, I know this arena is going to be full of blue at the very least. And that's a big problem. And again, it goes back to as you mentioned, Jason, there's 2 different sessions and they have to kick. You failed to mention one thing. They have to kick everybody else of the first session out of the arena first.
Right.
The new session in. Yeah. And that is what took a long time, apparently, is getting people out of the arena because the last game, the Miami game, ended less than 90 minutes before the start of the Duke game.
Yeah. So it was an absolute mess having all that, with the fans trying to get back into the arena. I've heard numerous stories from people who were really frustrated and missed a good section of the first half of this game. I mean, can you imagine how pissed you'd be if you paid, premium prices and you show up and Duke's already leading by 15 and the game's sort of in the snoozer category. But the other thing we have to talk about, the important thing is there is an ice hockey arena underneath this basketball floor. And the condensation on the basketball floor was a major issue. Wendell Moore fell down twice on one play, hurt his hip. Coach K said, and Wendell said, it's bothering him, but he's going to be fine. But they got to fix this. They got to fix this.
So apparently Wendell Moore slipped twice on one play. Correct. But the injury to his hip happened with the first play of the second half, where he also slipped after the steal. He was trying to get back and he slipped again and he landed on that hip. They said he's like, basically what they're basically saying. And Wendell said that he's a gamer. He's going to be ready for Sunday no matter what. But that's a real concern. And Jason, we see this in arenas all the time, right? We just played in Brooklyn, who, Brooklyn used to have the Islanders until this very year, where there has been this issue, but for some reason it exacerbated itself last night and just during this game, because it didn't really happen as much during the Davidson Sparty game. It didn't happen much during the morning session. It might have just been the combination of the number of people that were in the arena caused a little bit of AC and the ice and everything to really bubble up and form condensation on the floor. But it was a major problem, and it rattled our team, because after that one play that you mentioned where Dell slipped, he slipped twice in one play. Everyone seemed like they were on skates. They were just kind of tiptoeing because they didn't want to plant their foot in the fear that they would slip and fall. So there was the next play. He comes down, they come down, and Cal State Fullerton is driving, and Jeremy Roach basically has to let the guy go by because he's so afraid that he's going to slip on the perimeter and twist an ankle or something like that. That's a real serious problem they need to address.
Yeah, this would have been, and maybe we need to talk to Michigan State or Davidson fans about what this was like in the second game, where it was actually close the whole way. And I know we'll talk a bit about that game when we preview the Spartans, but it's a good thing for Duke that this game wasn't close, because I'm sure we would have heard a lot more complaining about the quality of the floor in this one.
Yeah, you teed it up. If this had been a one possession game, I would have been flipping out over the slipping. It was an easy game to watch, so it didn't feel like a big deal. But man, like I said, they got to finish this. They got to figure this out and make it so that A, the fans are in the arena properly, and B, that the floor is playable, because that should not happen in an NCAA tournament game. And God forbid someone gets hurt. That'd be the worst. It would not be fair. All right, so that pretty much wraps it up for our conversation about the game that happened against Cal State Fullerton, number 2 seed versus number 15 seed. Expected result, Blue Devils victory. When we come back from the break, we look ahead. Up next, the Michigan State Spartans. God, it feels like we face them every single time we play the NCAA tournament. Duke, Michigan State, Coach K, Tom Izzo, coming up. We're back from the break, and it's time to preview what is next for the Blue Devils. It is the Michigan State Spartans. Coach K versus Tom Izzo for the 6th time in the NCAA tournament. That, by the way, is a record. The most common coaching matchup of all time in the NCAA tournament is Coach K versus Tom Izzo. The two guys, they're now breaking a record. They were tied with Roy Williams and Bill Self, have played each other 5 times. Eddie Sutton and Denny Crum, a couple guys from my youth, have also played each other 5 times. But now Coach K and Tom Izzo facing each other for the 6th time. It is, by the way, the 16th time that K and Izzo will face each other all time. Coach K leads 12-3 in all-time matchups, but just 3-2 in NCAA tournament matchups. And we all vividly remember the last time Duke played Michigan State in the NCAA tournament. It was the final game for Zion Williamson, RJ Barrett, Cam Reddish, and the rest of that team that I think all of us thought were going to make the Final Four, but Michigan State knocked us out in the round of 8. We do not want to see Coach K's career end against Tom Izzo. So, Donald, I come to you first as we do our preview. Like you always do, tell me about this Michigan State team in terms of who they've played and how they're playing.
Yeah, so Michigan State this year, they're 23-12 on the season. That includes, obviously, the game last night where they beat Davidson. They were 11-9 in the Big Ten, which was 7th. So they weren't necessarily the team that we expected them to be, but I'll talk about where they have been the prototypical Michigan State team that we know and have seen over the years. They made it to the Big Ten tournament semis where they lost to Purdue. And again, I mentioned they beat Davidson last night. Their best wins, though, Purdue in the regular season, Loyola, Chicago, UConn, and Wisconsin in the Big Ten tournament. And their bad losses were to Northwestern. That's not necessarily a bad loss. Penn State, both of those teams fairly decent on the year. But here's the thing about Michigan State.
Shout out Chris Collins. Shout out Chris Collins.
Yeah, shout out Chris Collins. Like, here's the thing about Michigan State. Take everything else out that Jason and Sam are going to talk about. We all 3 of us know this, and you out there know this as well. Michigan State is physical. Michigan State hustles their asses off. Michigan State is always working, and Michigan State will rebound. Those 4 things are constant, like death and taxes. That we're going to expect that. We have to expect that. Now, while they may be faltering in some areas that they normally excel at, this is a well-coached team. This is a big team. They will come with the qualities you expect from a Tom Izzo-led team. Again, those 4 hustles: physicality, working hard, hustle, rebounding. Here's an interesting stat, though, Jason, and I'm going to use this to lead into your advanced metrics. Izzo is a coach that does not like to bring players back in when they have 2 fouls. So if we get some of these guys in the foul trouble, again, you have guys like Joey Hauser, who we've heard his name quite a bit over the years. You know, he just went off for 27 against Davidson. If we could get him into foul trouble, he does not like bring these guys back in. Only if you take the total available first half minutes, only 7% of available first half minutes were by a player with 2 fouls. So the key is outwork them, out hustle them, out rebound them, and also go right at them. If you get them in the foul trouble, you take some of these guys out of the game, and then of course he's going to use his bench. He's known to use his bench.
They got a deep bench too. Yeah,
they got a deep bench. But if you get these guys in a foul trouble, it changes the way they have to play because they can no longer be physical. They can no longer dive, without abandon for loose rebounds and loose balls. They have to be careful. And once you take that intangible out of their hands, you're in the driver's seat. And I think that is how you beat a Michigan State Spartan team.
So I want, like you said, I'm gonna get into the advanced metrics very quickly. They are ranked 38th in Ken Pom. Michigan State is. They're 35 on offense, 59 on defense. So a good, even a very good team, across the board. Not sort of great at anything. Like you mentioned, Donald, they're a good but not great rebounding team. They're like, ranked around number 100 in both offensive and defensive rebounding numbers. On offense, they are a very good 3-point shooting team. This team hits 37% of their 3-pointers. That's like top 25 in the country, but they're not a team that bombs away. Like the reason they hit a lot of their threes is they only take them when they're open. They only take good threes. They're just 220th in the country in the number of 3-pointers they have taken. So this is not a team that's going to shoot a ton of threes, but when they do shoot, they tend to make it. They turn the ball over a lot for a Tom Izzo team. Almost 1 out of every 5 possessions ends in a turnover. They're like almost at 20% on their turnover percentage, which is not good. And that's a place they cleaned that up against Davidson. They did a really nice job in that aspect against Davidson. Duke's going to need to turn them over. If Michigan State doesn't turn the ball over against Duke, that will be a problem. That's something to watch from the very beginning of the game. On defense, speaking of turnovers, they are terrible at forcing turnovers. If Duke gives the ball to Michigan State, that's bad, because this is a team that is 330th in the nation, 330th at forcing turnovers. They're good at defending the 3-point line. Opponents only hit about 31% of their threes. And this Michigan State team is a very good shot blocking team. Top 25 in the country at shot blocking. They have 7-footer Marcus Bingham on the back line defending the rim, and he's really good back there. And they are a big team. They're the 12th biggest team in Division I. According to Ken Pomeroy. Paulo Banchero is going to have like 6'8", 6'9" guys guarding him the whole time. Wendell Moore, AJ Griffin, who are used to being bigger than the guys playing against them. Not this game. They are nothing. Michigan State, they got some smaller point guard guys, but the rest of their team is just nothing but guys who are considerably, big for their position from a college standpoint.
The one thing about the blocking I think is interesting because, as I mentioned, they're a really good rebounding team. The reason why, as you mentioned, the metrics say that they're a little bit down is that they're a better shot blocking team than they normally are because they have those tall trees. But the key to it is this: pump fakes. Pump fakes go up. They literally like try to glory hunt for the block. And if you get them up in the air, then you can go up. And again, as I mentioned, fouls will take them out of the game, or at least make them adjust how they play. So if we can get guys into paint, Paulo Banchero, Mark Williams, if they can go for pump fakes, they'll get those guys up in the air. They can go up and do their thing.
Yeah, so we've mentioned a couple guys by name, but not too much. And Sam, I want to go to you. Give me the players we need to watch out for in Michigan State, whose name's going to be called a lot.
You guys both highlighted the fact that Michigan State has a really deep bench. Part of that, as you noted, Donald, is that Tom Izzo is loath to leave guys in with 2 fouls in the first half, but Michigan State basically plays like a 9 or 10 man rotation. It is very possible that we'll see 10 guys getting real minutes tomorrow against Duke, which is going to be a huge contrast to the way that Duke plays, where if Duke is playing well, it's really only 6 guys that play for Duke, maybe a C7, maybe Joey Baker is the 8th man off the bench, or is the 3rd guy off the bench, I guess. But Michigan State's got a deep lineup, and the thing that really stands out about them is the is the amount of time that they've spent with the program and the consistency. So a lot of guys who stay 3-4 years with Tom Izzo, who tend to get better, and especially relative to other teams in Division I, not that many transfers, not that many guys that are like Joey Hauser came in after his freshman season at Marquette, where he would have played with Theo John and played for Steve Wojciechowski, which is sort of an interesting nugget from this one. We had talked about how if Duke was playing Davidson, that Bates Jones might have been the key. Well, both Joey Hauser and Theo John were teammates once upon a time. Not sure how much that makes a difference here, but most of the rest of the guys that are key players for them are experienced multi-year players. They've got Gabe Brown and Marcus Bingham are both starters. They're seniors who have been on this Michigan State team since they beat Zion Williamson and RJ Barrett in the 2019 tournament. They've also got Malik Hall is a key rotation player who's a junior for them. A couple guys who are sophomores and only one freshman that gets major minutes for them. That's Max Christie, who is also a starter, but is not putting up the kind of numbers that the rest of the team is. We mentioned the 3-point shooting. Gabe Brown and Joey Hauser are both pretty good 3-point shooters. Obviously, Hauser had a great night last night against Davidson. And Jason, you mentioned the bigs. I talked about Marcus Bingham, who's one of the seniors. He is a load inside, 7 feet, 230 pounds, pulls down a ton of rebounds at both ends of the court. Mark Williams is going to have his hands full with Marcus Bingham in a way that he typically does not have against most guys. When I was looking at Michigan State, though, one of the things that really stood out to me is that sort of across the board, it feels like they're experienced, they have good players, but Donald, maybe I need
no star. There's no star on this team.
No star. And what I wanted to throw back to Donald is like, there are all these games in the second half of the Big Ten season where Michigan State, like you said, they have a couple of good wins. They beat Purdue in the regular season. They beat Wisconsin in the Big Ten tournament. Both of those are very high seeds in the tournament. But a lot of like 10, 12, 15-point losses to teams that like are roughly equivalent to them or teams that they like shouldn't have even lost to. They got killed by Rutgers a few weeks ago. So what is it about Michigan State that it feels like, as you're sort of doing a side by side of them, other than the experience, they feel it just feels like sort of across the board, they're like a worse version of Duke. They're like a pretty good offensive team, a not great defensive team, but they have it seems like they have the chops. So what is it that they were missing all during this regular season?
They were inconsistent in a lot of areas, but namely, again, a lot of times they hustle every single game. But when that's gone, it neutralizes a lot of what they do. The physicality is neutralized by a lot of what they do. And I think when it comes to Michigan State, they were very inconsistent. I think Izzo has talked about how he keeps trying to preach to his guys that, hey, you got to be like this every single night. And they just haven't been doing that, especially in the Big Ten, where you have a lot of scrappy teams that can, beat you on any given night.
Look, they've got, like I said, they've got no star. They've got 8 guys who average between 6 and 11 points per game. And Gabe Brown, who averages 11 points per game, is the only guy averaging in double figures. It's just a team with a lot of different parts, and the parts fit together pretty nicely, but none of those parts are particularly special. I guess that's the way to say it. One guy I want folks to keep an eye on, Sam, you didn't mention him, but AJ Hoggard, who's like, he had been their backup point guard. They recently promoted him to the starting point guard. He's the engine that drives things for them when he's on the floor. Get this. AJ Hoggard is the top assist rate player in the country. When he is on the floor, he assists on 46% of the baskets that they make. That is an amazing number. All by himself, he assists on 46% of the baskets when he's in the game. Now he only plays about half the game because Michigan State is really, really deep, and they sort of share positions with other players. But it's I think it'd be really interesting if Duke is able to, when Hoggard is in, he was great, by the way, against Davidson. If Hoggard is in the game and Duke is able to sort of prevent him from getting them into good, scoring situations, that's going to be a huge bonus for Duke. But Michigan, they're a tough team to prepare for because there's nobody who you're like, oh, that's the guy we have to stop, because they got like 9 different guys who all do the same thing.
Jason, one more interesting note about Michigan State. You had mentioned, I think before the break, that it feels like we play them every year and that there are all these famous matchups. Not as many, like more than you would expect NCAA tournament matchups, including that 2019 game. But I was looking back at the historical record, and we think that I feel like in 2022, we think, man, Duke plays Michigan State all the time. Going back to 2015, we have averaged playing them once a year. There was only 1 year in that span, 2016.
That's crazy.
Duke didn't play Michigan State in 2016, but every other season since 2015 we've played. And in 2015, we played them twice, most notably in that Final Four game where Grayson Allen had the amazing dunk. So yeah, it's amazing how often Duke and Michigan State play. Now, that's a function of between the Champions Classic and the ACC Big Ten Challenge. There are a lot of chances early in the season for Duke and Michigan State to play, but in the years when they don't play in the regular season, they play in the NCAA tournament, or maybe they play twice. So that was pretty neat. It is interesting that sort of prior to that, it wasn't as frequent as it has been this last 6-7 years. And, as there's two ways this is going to play out. Duke is going to win this game, and Tom Izzo is just going to get frustrated looking back at a season where it just feels like almost every game they played against good opponents, and they had plenty of opportunities. They played Kansas and Baylor both early in the season. Obviously, Kansas in the ACC Big Ten Challenge, but they also played Baylor. They ran through the Big Ten schedule, which is tough. There's a lot of 2s, 3s, 4, 5 seed type teams in the Big Ten, but just constant, regular like losing games to teams that they should be more competitive with. I wouldn't be surprised if Tom Izzo after this season is like I've only got 1 year left in me after this mess, or he takes out Coach K, which would be not storybook for us, but certainly an interesting end to Coach K's career to have it ended by Tom Izzo, a guy who he's mostly had the upper hand on, although Izzo has made a lot of progress in recent seasons.
Yeah, and I was going to say that when it comes to these two, this is the last matchup that they'll have together. As you mentioned, Jason, K is 12-3 against Izzo, but K has lost the last 2 games that the two teams have faced off in that Champions Classic game that was in Cameron a couple years ago, and then the 2019 NCAA Elite 8, of which I was at. I do not want to repeat that. I know a lot of Sparty fans who are saying they want to be the team that ends Coach K's career. There's a lot riding on the line, not just for this, but for other implications for Coach K, namely milestones that are very, very close. I'm not going to mention them just because, knock on wood, but this is a game that I want badly. As someone from Michigan, I just want this game very, very badly. I hope we come out firing tomorrow.
Donald, Michigan State has won 2 of the last 3 against Duke. So Duke won the ACC Big Ten Challenge in 2020.
Oh, yes.
Which would have been like a few months after the Zion and RJ team was bounced from the tournament. But yeah, Duke is 1-2 in its last 3 against Michigan State.
All right, last word on this game. Ken Pomeroy predicts Duke will win 77-70. Bart Torvik also predicts Duke will win 77-70. And everybody, all these computers, all these metrics and such project Duke with about a 72 to 75% chance of winning this game. So let's get it done. Guys, before we go, quickly, because it's a long podcast and it's only going to be only really relevant for another 36 hours or so, but we got to talk about the rest of the bracket. The ACC, by the way, 5-1 so far. Only the conference champions, Virginia Tech, went down after playing great against Duke. Virginia Tech stunk it up. But it gets considerably tougher for the ACC. UNC plays Baylor. Miami plays Auburn. Notre Dame plays Texas Tech. I'm loving Notre Dame, by the way, so far. God, please take out Texas Tech. That'd be great if you did. And I want to note before we talk about the rest of the bracket, guys, there are 105 people in the DBR bracket challenge, the DBR tournament pool. Sam and I are 47th out of 105. Sam, we're right in the middle. We're doing okay.
I'm okay with that. And if Duke wins, then maybe we tick up more. But obviously, there are going to be more people picking Duke in the DBR bracket challenge than there are across the country.
Yes. So we're 47th. By the way, we're 59th percentile nationally. So among everyone on the ESPN pool thing, Sam, we're 59th percentile. It's not bad. But Donald is kicking butt. Donald is 13th in the Duke pool and in the 87th percentile nationally. Donald, congratulations, sir. You're doing quite well so far.
Hey, Day one was great for me. Day two wasn't as great, but I think I was third in the bracket after day one. So shout out to all my day ones. They took care of business for me.
Day one, by the way, this is the second year in a row, I feel like, that there were just huge upsets and incredible games, like tons of overtime games and last second shots on day one. And then day two was a little bit like, not as much.
Nothing quite held up to the Kentucky St. Peter's game from day one.
I will say that Illinois Chattanooga game yesterday was really
good.
Cool. The only reason that we didn't have a chance to really experience it because we were watching our game about the same time.
Yeah, we were keeping tabs on that game. We were like looking at the score bug. But like you said, Donald, didn't get to watch it, and so don't have as much of an appreciation for what happened to Illinois in that one.
Guys, anything else on? I mean, do y'all want to talk about Kentucky at all?
Poor Kentucky. I know that the three of us talked about this in our group chat, so this is an opportunity to plug for The Athletic again. But Kyle Tuckler in The Athletic wrote a I don't know if it was scathing, but pretty tough review of Coach Cal's performance against St. Peter's, a school I was sort of saying to folks yesterday. There aren't that many teams that show up in the NCAA tournament that I just haven't heard of before. I don't think I had heard of St. Peter's prior to them being a 15 seed in this NCAA tournament.
Jersey City, what's up? There's a couple of things I have on this tournament. One, Kentucky. Sorry. That's my thing of Kentucky. Number two, if you picked Iowa to go far, here's a fun fact about Fran McCaffrey that I told Jason and Sam via our chat. Fran McCaffrey has never made it out of the first weekend of the NCAA tournament. Never. And he has been coaching for 40 years. Just going to put that out there.
Go far.
Picked Iowa to go far. I'm very sorry that you did not know that stat before they lost in round one. And third, take the games aside. I will note that I have been dying laughing at least two commercials that have come out during this NCAA tournament. One, the Grant Hill Marriott Bonvoy commercial with all the mascots is by far the funniest thing.
Blue Devil, you're staying at the Ritz-Carlton.
You stay at the Ritz-Carlton, the presidential suite, and they all just get up and leave. That is hilarious. Also, Coach K is in an AT&T commercial about his future plans for after coaching. You may walk into an AT&T store and you may see him and Lily. But as of right now, he does not have the job. They're going to get back to him because he said he's not available during the month of March, which I agree with you, Coach. You're not available this month. You got bigger things to do.
So I got a great St. Peter's, Kentucky story. So before that game even started, I have a family, a family text chat with everyone in my immediate family. There are like 20 of us who are on it. And one of my nephews pointed out, he sent a photo of him and several of his buddies from I think it was his 7th grade school basketball team. And he goes, there's this guy who plays for St. Peter's who I played with when I was in 7th grade. He goes, they didn't call it. It's Daryl Banks, who, by the way, is St. Peter's best player, had 27 points against Kentucky. He goes, he had like a different nickname. They didn't call him Daryl Banks, but anyway, he said, yeah, Daryl, my man, he I played with him. And my brother said after the game, after St. Peter's knocked them off, this family text chat was going crazy on St. Peter's stuff throughout the entire game, because people were just loving the fact that a guy that we had played with was leading St. Peter's to victory. My brother said that thanks to St. Peter's victory, people who have eaten barbecue at my brother's house are currently undefeated in the NCAA tournament this year. So I thought that was amusing.
I also wanted to highlight, I know that we're loath to give credit to UNC ever on this podcast, but I don't know if anybody had a more impressive first round performance than UNC had against Marquette. You think about when you get the 8-9 game in that first day of the tournament, it feels almost like a curse. Like it's worse to be like an 8 seed than it is to be a 10 seed, because you get the tough first game and then you have to turn around and play. And I know that this show is going to come out maybe even like during the UNC Baylor game, but man, UNC's prize for beating the crap out of Marquette is that they have to play Baylor next. And if you're looking at first round games as sort of an indicator of how good you are going forward, Baylor and North Carolina delivered like two of the most prolific beatdown performances of the first round. So that should be a good game today.
A couple final notes for people with brackets. Again, we had a 11-6 upset, which is great. Of course, the 12-5, I think there's only been 2 years of the last 17 where a 12-5 upset has not happened.
I'm picking nothing but 12 from now on.
There was a couple.
Well, it was like all 11 seeds winning. Yes, 3 of the 4 11 seeds in the first round are making it to the second round.
Yeah, and I believe only one 12 seed did not win a game. Only one 12 seed did not win a game, and that was Wyoming because they lost in the first 4. Like, that's pretty good for the 12-5s. And also, I wanted to point out for people that the people who are in the first 4, only 1 year have they not had a team win a game. Shout out to Notre Dame because they ended up winning. I picked Iowa or Indiana and I messed up. I should have gone with Notre Dame, but every year except for one, since they've started the first 4 with those last 4 teams in, one of them has gone on to win a game. And as I mentioned, like even last year with UCLA, they rode it all the way to the Final Four. So look out for Notre Dame.
I know I've mentioned this in previous years. I'm not sure that I mentioned it this year in leading up to the tournament. I do play in one bracket challenge with a bunch of folks. That it's a pool that's run by one of my college friends, but he's got, non-Duke people in there as well. A lot of people now actually in this bracket pool where we pick all 4 of the men's postseason tournaments. They rebranded the.
Oh my God! Really?
Have I told you guys about this? So
no.
We pick the NCAA tournament. We pick the NIT. We pick the CBI, and we pick the recently rebranded TBC tournament that used to be the CIT. I mean, it's a joke. The whole everyone participating in this. We have a big email thread for it, and everyone's like, "Oh, I was checking in on a game between 2 teams." Whose home states I cannot identify, but who are playing in postseason tournaments. The thing has to be managed in Excel because there are no online bracket challenges for these things. And the 2 lower tournaments, the CBI and the TBC, also don't have websites. So
wait. They
shout out Wikipedia.
Really?
So my friend who runs the pool has this hilarious. He has like a stream of consciousness that he'll share with us in email about how hard it is to figure out which teams are playing in these tournaments because it's not clear and teams will just randomly drop out because they'll just decide we don't want to show up. So the bracket will be changing periodically. And they may even change the format of the tournament because teams are not showing up and now there's COVID. So there's additional reasons why teams are falling out of these brackets. In any event, all of that to say, and by the way, if you want to be included in this next year, just email us dbrpodcast@gmail.com. It's obviously
I want no part of this. I do not want to be included.
I think I've invited you guys before and you were both like, why would I do that? It's
I think I was like, I don't have time for my own, for one bracket. I literally submit one bracket and just submit it to everything.
Well, so I submit
for
one bracket, but I have to know a lot about other things too. So yes, I use the same bracket across all the pools that I join, which is not good, probably not good betting practice, but it's just better for my research and sanity. But I do have to read up on all these awful teams. All of this to say, one of the things that my friend's pool does that
there's a point to all this. Okay, good.
Yes. The if you're joining pools on ESPN or Yahoo or CBS, wherever, they don't force you to pick the play-in games. This was the point I was coming to because Donald had mentioned how teams from the play-in game always make it to the second round.
Oh, you guys pick the play-in games?
So we have to pick the play-in games. Oh yeah, one of the fun parts about this is that all the brackets come out Sunday night, and we have to have all of our picks submitted by Tuesday afternoon. In previous years, it was by Monday because in some years, some of these lower tournaments have had play-in games on the day after, so they'll have a Monday game. But we pick all the play-in games, so I have a sense going into the first weekend, I would have a distinction between Notre Dame, and now I don't even remember who Notre Dame played in that first game, but Rutgers. I would have had to. Yeah, exactly. So I would have had to make a pick between Notre Dame and Rutgers. So I have some semblance of a sense for this, but most people picking these brackets are well, I can't pick Notre Dame or Rutgers over Alabama. I don't even know who's going to be playing in this game. So it feels kind of silly. Anyway, all of that to say, the bracket challenges should force us to pick the play-in games, and everyone should just get their picks in by Tuesday. It's not like you're not doing this on Sunday night anyway.
I agree. I agree with you. That'd be a lot.
Can I throw one more snarky comment out?
Sure.
And hopefully Duke doesn't lose to Michigan State. But Alabama lost in the first game, and so Nate Oates is out of the tournament, and we think Nate Oates is a dumb jerk. So that's great.
Funny how that happened.
So we've been on for like more than an hour, and we got to be done. But I do want to mention really quickly before we go, at 7:00 last night, 7:00 Friday night, literally minutes before Duke was going to tip off, Jared McClain, 6'2" shooting guard, ranked in the top 25 by ESPN and 24/7, everybody else, class of 2023, committed to Duke. We got John Shire got another.
Wait, I completely missed this.
You didn't know about it? No, Jared McClain. Yeah,
I found out after the game. Like he literally,
right.
as the game was tipping off, he was like going to Duke, and everybody's like, yeah, game's on.
I wasn't looking at Twitter after the game ended, so I have no idea about this. Why don't you guys start talking about him, and I will look him up. Well,
so no. What I'm going to say is, there's just not time, and frankly, I haven't done all the research to tell you everything you need to know about Jared McClain. He is, like I said, top 25 shooting guard, really nice shooting stroke. Another great pickup for John Shire in the class of 2023. We've already got Caleb Foster. We've already got Sean Stewart in that class. All three of those guys ranked, in the top 20, top 25, McDonald's All-American kind of players. It's just amazing. I mean, Shire's recruiting is like crazy, ridiculous, off the charts. The thing about Jared McClain that I want everyone to know is that this dude is a huge TikTok star. He has a really fun personality. He's really funny. I think he's going to be just a joy to interview and to watch post-game interviews and stuff like that with. I think Jared McClain is going to be a lot of fun as a Dookie. He's got a really nice stroke from the outside. He can shoot from distance. He's also a really good passer. So I'm really looking forward to having him at Duke. And I just wanted to highlight one last thing. I love this quote that he gave after he committed. He said, "I'm going in with an open mind, not worrying about minutes played or playing time. I'm just going to work hard, try and get better and find my spot. I'm going to be staying at Duke and getting better every year." That means that Jared McClain doesn't think he's one and done. and I love to hear that from the guy. It means he's not coming in expecting that he must be a starter. Clearly, Duke hasn't promised him anything. He's good enough, perhaps, to be one and done. But I just love the guys where it actually seems like they might be committed to spending multiple years on campus.
If you want me to be the wet blanket here, he's a 5-star recruit. Now that I get to look at his 247 profile, he's a 5-star recruit. He also had offers from Kansas and Gonzaga. So this is not like Duke found somebody that nobody else was on.
By the way, Gonzaga was the other that was his real other finalist. So we beat Gonzaga again.
and I know that it's impossible to look a year and a half ahead at Duke's roster and have any idea who's going to be there. But just based on the guys we have coming in and the guys who are currently in the program, the guard lineup outside of that class of 2023 is actually fairly thin for Duke, assuming that even Jeremy Roach and even Wendell Moore potentially coming back. I actually completely disagree with you.
It is possible that in 2023, the Jeremy Roach is still there. He would be a senior that year if he doesn't go pro early. Caleb Foster is a top, a little bit higher.
He's on the team.
Yeah. So Caleb Foster, will be there. Jaden Shute is almost certainly going to still be at Duke that year. Jalen Blakes is probably going to, I think we are loaded in the backcourt. I actually think it's going to be hard. I'm thrilled that Jared McClain is coming to Duke and that he has this attitude of I'm going to have to work for my minutes, because I think minutes are going to be very difficult to come by in Duke's backcourt in 2023.
Well, these guys are all talented and have high expectations of themselves. So attrition to either the NBA or to other programs is high. I would not be surprised if he's at least a strong rotation player by the time he gets to Durham.
Oh, yeah, I expect him to be. I'm just saying we're going to have I think our backcourt is in great shape for 2023.
It sounds good to me. Let's do it. Also, I just checked because, they usually do the another one, like tweets out by Duke men's basketball. They literally did it like sandwiched in between tip off and the starting lineup. They're like, oh yeah, by the way, another one. Like even they were like, yeah. Like just so you know, we're aware of it. Yeah. But we have a game. So
why? I need to read more about this guy. What was his motivation for committing on the day of Duke's first NCAA tournament game? Did he have any comments about that?
Not that I've seen. I think that he had decided. He had recently taken visits to Gonzaga and Duke, and I think he decided it was a Friday, so he wanted to do it on a Friday so he could, party and have a good time over the weekend, celebrating the fact that he had committed and such. He's from California, so like we looked at 7 p.m. and we're like, wait, Duke's starting their game at that hour, but for him it was 4 p.m. It was right after school's done, so a lot of it makes sense. Yeah, I mean, there's a world where he waits till Monday or Tuesday and gets a little more attention. I like the fact that he isn't all about the attention, though. Although he is.
Jason, you were just talking about how he's a TikTok star.
He's a content creator.
You don't have to play him up.
I don't know.
You don't have to fluff the guy. It's fine. He likes attention. He's a top basketball player and he likes to be on TikTok. It's fine that he likes attention. We like Nolan Smith likes attention. We all love him.
I'm making this commitment to Jared McClain and to our audience. All three of us are going to go out after the NCAA tournament is over, and we're going to watch a bunch of Jared McClain TikToks, and we're going to have a podcast where we at least talk a little bit about Jared McClain, TikTok star and future Duke star.
Is this the reason why I'm going to finally download TikTok?
Nope. The best TikToks are on Instagram. The worst TikToks are on Instagram, and the most mediocre TikToks are on Instagram.
There we go.
Or on Twitter. I haven't downloaded TikTok yet, and I'm not sure, Jason, if you just convinced me to do it.
If you want to watch it someplace else, you can. I'm sure Jared McClain's social media profile exists outside of the world of TikTok. Guys, this is too long. We're done. Podcast wrap up. We've got to be finished with this podcast. The Blue Devils will be playing Michigan State. We will be back to recap that game, and God willing, preview yet another game coming up for the Devils as we attempt to get to the Sweet 16 in Coach K's final season. For Donald, for Sam, I am Jason. This has been podcast number 404 of the DBR Duke Basketball Report podcast. Go Devils, beat Sparty, Duke fans.